Hello, welcome. My name is SlugMTG, and today I thought it'd be kind of fun to go look at some cards that I personally would like to see downshifted into Pauper. With the meta kind of in shambles right now, people trying to figure out what's good with the Astrolabe ban happening, it could be kind of fun just to look at some hypothetical situations as we wait for the meta to settle down a little bit. Some conditions that I tried to keep to when looking for cards is I chose only uncommons. Rares have been downshifted to common before, but I don't want to make that leap now. I tried to stay away from ridiculous uncommons that did way too much or the power level was just way too high. I'm not looking to break the meta, I'm looking to just add some different twists to it. I tried to keep two cards that would specifically help tier 2 decks that just weren't quite there, could use a little bit more help, or some cards that I feel like could create maybe a new deck that would come by and help shake things up a little bit. I just thought it'd be a little fun to go ahead and just kind of hypothesize, speculate, fun little discussion. The first card here, if you saw my last video, you know that I really like Orzhov enchantments in the meta right now. I feel like it's pretty good, and the first card would definitely add to that strength. So here we have Circle of Affliction. For 1 and a black, we have an enchantment. As Circle of Affliction comes into play, choose a color. Whenever a source of the chosen color deals damage to you, you may pay 1. If you do, target player loses 1 life, and you gain 1 life. This is a great flexible card. If you cast this early, it'll really help keep out that early aggression that black-white enchantments crumble to. It's strong pretty much all game, as in Pauper, we don't have a lot of alternate win conditions. The main way you're going to win is by depleting your opponent's life total to 0. So whether you draw this in the early game and gradually start wearing out your opponent, or draw this in the late game and try to gain back some of that life, it's gonna be a pretty good draw all game. It adds to the life gain theme of the deck without being too powerful, since you do have to invest this mana into it, but the deck itself is pretty capable at holding mana open with things like Pestilence, and if you don't have a Pestilence but you have some spare mana, then Circle of Affliction can help you stay in the game while you're digging for your other main win conditions. And speaking of the pay 1, it really does help keep this card in check. If it was just a flat target player loses 1 life and you gain a life, then this card would be way too good, at least for Pauper. But that pay 1 really help balances out, and I feel like it would add a lot to the deck without really bringing it to be the best deck in the meta. The next card, I specifically had Madness decks in mind with Call the Bloodline. For 1 and a black, we have an enchantment. You may pay 1, discard a card, put a 1/1 black Vampire Knight creature token with lifelink onto the battlefield. Activate this ability only once each turn. It's a very good discard outlet with a very strong effect of putting that token out into play. It helps Madness decks swarm out and really just helps punch through to the enemy just a little bit faster. It's also really good at protecting against Edict effects, so as you maybe get out your bigger Madness creatures, this will help protect them as well, as Edicts are very good right now. I definitely see a lot of them. It can't be abused as the tagline of only once each turn, so we don't really have to worry about just going super wide super quickly. The lifelink also on the tokens can't be ignored. You have to deal with that, as every single time they deal damage to someone, it's a 2 life swing, not just 1. And Madness, I feel like, is a deck that's almost there. It's so close, and it's really difficult printing Madness cards because it's a mechanic that can very easily be broken, and Wizards has definitely been keeping it safe as far as printing Madness cards. So as far as bringing a Madness card down, that would be a little risky, I think, and having a decent discard outlet could prove to do a lot for the deck. Speaking of discarding only for your opponents, mono black discarding has a lot of effects going for it, except a win condition. It's kind of just a minor sub-theme of mono black control, but having a dedicated mono black discard deck could be enough to shake up the meta a little bit, so my suggestion would be to bring down Shrieking Affliction. For a single black mana, we get an enchantment with, at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, if that player has 1 or fewer cards in hand, he or she loses 3 life. This is the one that I expect to receive the most criticism on. It could very well be broken, as you're making your opponents discard every answer they might have to this card, but let's go a little risky and say Shrieking Affliction. The reason why I don't think this would necessarily be broken is because you would have to keep that card advantage, or keep your opponents from having card advantage for several turns in a row. It would be a very slow grind, and if your opponents ever got rid of Shrieking Affliction or just top decked a really good answer that you couldn't answer back, then the deck would not win. I don't feel like it would be that strong of a deck, but it'd be strong enough to maybe pop up every once in a while. Black does have a lot of card draw in it, so you would be able to dig through your deck pretty quickly in order to find a card like this. My biggest concern about this is that discarding cards is not very fun, but Pauper itself is full of prison lock decks, and adding one more to it I don't think would do all that much. Especially with Denrova Horror, that's kind of the closest thing we have to a pure discarding deck, but once again, discarding, it just kind of goes into a prison lock deck where you win through combat damage, or most likely your opponent just scoops. And so having Shrieking Affliction as a major win condition for these discarding decks might be a good thing. Like I said before, this is the one I feel like I'm going to receive the most flack on. Next up is a deck that I feel like everybody really likes. It's Slivers, specifically Selesnya Slivers, but I feel like Slivers is a tribal deck that everybody really likes, and I see a lot of people kind of disappointed that Slivers just aren't that relevant in the meta right now, especially with how much creature removal is going around. So my suggestion would be taking Ward Sliver down to the common level. It's 4 and a white, and as Ward Sliver comes into play, choose a color. All slivers have protection from the chosen color, and it is a 2/2. I really like this as a top end for those sliver decks, as slivers tend to be a more aggro mid-range, and having this at the top end does 2 main things for the deck. It's a pretty flexible card, as one, it helps your slivers go through, as giving protection to the color that your opponent's creatures are means that they can't be blocked. So it helps finish the game after your opponents might establish some type of board, and it helps protect your own slivers as it makes them harder to get rid of. Giving them protection from black would mean that all those black kill spells, they just won't be affected anymore, and the only ways they could really be eliminated are by those edict effects. I feel like Ward Sliver would be a very good top deck because of those main reasons. Slivers, they need help, and they need help sticking, and they need help getting through, and Ward Sliver really does both of those things, and because it does cost 5 mana, I don't feel like it would be broken. I feel like it'd be a very, very good top deck, and I would love to see this down at common level. This is one of the ones I want the most. The final archetype I'm going to talk about in this video is going to be Mill. Mill is one of those strategies that is always on the edge of every format, but never really a good deck. And so I have 2 cards this time, not just one, that I think would really help Mill come into the meta. The first one up is going to be everyone's favorite crab, Hedron Crab. For a single blue mana, we get a 0/2 crab with landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, target player puts the top 3 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard. This card is a classic card. A lot of people just love this card, and I think bringing it down into Pauper would do a lot of good for the format. It's consistent mill with every turn as long as you're hitting those land drops, and it's a 1-drop, so you can play this super early, probably on turn 2, that way you can put it down for 1 mana and immediately drop a land to start milling your opponent. It could also do a lot for graveyard decks, as they can run the crab and then consistently mill themselves out that way, and as far as I know, Tortured Existence is pretty much the only meta graveyard deck, and even then, Tortured Existence isn't near the top of the meta. It's a good deck, but just not near the top, so this could also help Portrait Existence if they do want to splash or fully commit to the color blue. But we're talking about mill. The biggest thing that holds mill back is the fact that when you play a card, your opponent dumps some cards into their graveyard and you never see that card again. With Hedron Crab, it's pretty consistent, at least as long as you're hitting those land drops. The fact that it is a 1-drop, you can get it up very early. It's a good blocker too at 0-2 for 1. It's not that bad. It can help alleviate some of that early aggression, taking the game a bit longer, maybe just enough to where you can successfully mill out your opponent. I think it's just a lot of fun to play with. A lot of people love brewing with it. A lot of people just really like this card in general, and having it in Pauper I think would be a very good thing. The second card I would recommend putting down to common level would be Psychic Spiral. For 4 and a blue, we have an instant. Shuffle all cards from your graveyard into your library. Target player puts that many cards from the top of his or her library into his or her graveyard. Obviously, this would be the top of the curve for the mill deck. I imagine this as a one-of in those decks, because this is a good finisher. After you've played all your single effect instants and sorceries that mill your opponent, after your Hedron Crabs have died, you can play Psychic Spiral, shuffling all of those cards back into your library, which could easily be upwards of 10, 15, even 20 or more, depending on how late the game goes, which is an explosive finish that could wrap up the game right there and successfully mill your opponent out. It rewards you for playing those instants and sorceries, as then all those in the graveyard now become tools, and you can redraw them. So you kind of filter through your deck a little bit, going through all those mill effects. You don't have to worry about running out, because you can just Psychic Spiral all of them back in and you're good to go again. Mill is very slow in Pauper. We don't have many explosive turns when it comes to mill, so Psychic Spiral I feel like would give it just enough explosiveness to not be maybe a tier 1 deck, but to at least be able to hold its own. And those are the cards that I would like to see downshifted to common. I feel like it'd be a lot of fun to see some of these cards. Maybe not Shrieking Affliction, that one, yeah, we'll see. Well, I guess we won't see, because these probably will never be downshifted to common, but it's fun to speculate. So let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Do you like my suggestions? Am I just completely off and I should never do a video like this ever again? Let me know. I'm interested to see what people have to hear. What are some cards that you would really like to see in Pauper? I'm having a lot of fun playing Pauper these past few weeks, and I just want to explore more possibilities, more everything. So let me know in the comments down below. As always, thank you guys so much for taking the time out of your day to watch my video. I really do appreciate it. But now, if you'll excuse me, I'm about to mill my opponent for 163 cards. Bye!